In the summer of 1983, radios were alive with a groundbreaking electronic hit, a vibrant synthesized sound, blending energetic beats with a mysterious voice that stood out. It was Sweet Dreams Are Made of This by Eurythmics, a synth-pop masterpiece that dominated the music charts. Do you remember this song?
Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to...
Annie Lennox, the voice behind this hit, was a fascinating and almost ethereal figure with an androgynous style. Orange hair, piercing eyes, and dark attire. That was as striking and unforgettable as her voice. In today's video, we're going to dive into the story of this great artist and talk a bit about the origins of her biggest hit. Drop in the comments which Eurythmics songs you love the most, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already joined our channel. Eurythmics was a songwriter duo formed by Scottish Annie Lennox and Englishman Dave Stewart. Annie was born on Christmas Day in 1954 in Aberdeen, a city known as the Granite City. Growing up in a working-class family, she excelled in music, poetry, and art, dreaming of becoming a professional flutist. Annie revealed in interviews that she suffered from seasonal affective disorder during this time, a type of depression caused by the lack of sunlight in her region during the winter months. At school, she sang in the choir, played in symphony orchestras, and took dance classes. At 17, Annie made one of the most important decisions of her life. Moving to London to study at a prestigious music academy, the teenager from northeast Scotland felt naive and idealistic. Being an only child from a strictly disciplined family, she soon realized that relocating there would be a significant challenge. As she put it, "It was very hard because I had so little money, really almost nothing. It was a huge city, and coming down to a place where you have no friends and nobody to relate to other than the students you just happen to meet at college is very isolating." Many in her situation might have returned home, but Annie was persistent. She balanced her studies with a waitressing job, where she met Dave Stewart, who recalled in an interview, "She was more Laura Ashley, dresses, and longish brown hair then. When I first went to her tiny bedsit, she sang a song she'd written on a harmonium. It was like, wow, what are you doing as a waitress? You're an artist." Realizing her future wasn't in flute playing and unlikely to secure an orchestra spot, Annie left the academy. She and Dave started dating and formed a pop rock band called The Tourists in 1978, releasing 3 albums. With a cover of Dusty Springfield's I Only Want to Be With You, they achieved great success, but by 1980, the band dissolved as quickly as it had risen to fame. Dave recounted to The Guardian in 2017 that the band ended while they were in Australia. In a hotel in Wagga Wagga, he and Annie were alone. Dave had a small synthesizer and started creating sounds reminiscent of a didgeridoo, an Australian Aboriginal musical instrument. When Annie began to sing along with the sounds, they envisioned the possibility of creating experimental and strange electronic music. On their way back home, Annie and Dave ended their romantic relationship but decided to continue their musical partnership. At one show, they performed to just 4 people, and driving home through the snow, they had to stop the car at 6 a.m. because Annie was crying. Dave realized they needed better equipment, so they approached a bank manager. Despite being an unusual pair, the manager surprisingly granted them a loan of £5,000. Dave struggled to operate the new equipment, and during this period, Annie was deeply depressed. While she lay curled up on the floor, Dave produced a beat and riff that caught Annie's attention, leading her to ask, "What the hell is that?" She then got up and started playing another synthesizer. In this duet, they crafted the first sounds of what would become a hit song. Annie and Dave had the freedom to expand their creativity and form Eurythmics. Their debut album, In the Garden, released in 1981, featured the electro-pop sound they would become famous for. Though commercially unsuccessful, it was a learning point for the duo. This experience led to the release of their second album, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, in January 1983, featuring a cover photo of Annie Lennox in profile, wearing a mask and holding what appears to be a heart-shaped box of chocolates. The title track was released as a single that month. It took a while to take off, but eventually reached second place on the British charts. Although Sweet Dreams was a huge success in Europe, it wasn't initially released in the United States because the heads of RCA Records felt it wasn't suitable for the American audience, mainly due to its lack of a well-defined chorus. However, everything changed when a DJ from a Cleveland radio station began playing the song. It quickly garnered a fan base, prompting the record label to release it in the United States in May 1983. The song slowly climbed the charts until it topped the Billboard chart, overtaking Every Breath You Take by The Police, which had been at the top for 7 weeks.
Every single day, and every word.
Sweet Dreams is often hailed as one of the most iconic songs of the 80s and catapulted Eurythmics to global stardom. The music video, directed by Dave Stewart, featured an odd mix of the natural world, with aimlessly wandering cows, a scene inspired by surrealists like Salvador Dali and Luis Buñuel, and the modern world. This video became a staple on MTV. Annie Lennox's androgynous and iconic image, with a black suit and orange hair, became a symbol of the early days of the network. Many speculated about her sexuality and compared her to Boy George. According to Dave, this masculine image was a response to sexism in the punk world. Annie knew that wearing feminine clothes on stage would lead to ridicule. In a 2017 interview with The Guardian, she shared more about the inspiration behind the song. "We'd come out of the end of the Tourists, battered and bruised. We were massively in debt, and I'd come across some real monsters in the music business. I'd lived in so many bedsits and was desperately unhappy. We'd survived, kinda, but it was tough. I felt like we were in a dream world, that whatever we were chasing was never going to happen. All this poured into Sweet Dreams." From that first line, it's not a happy song, it's dark. "Sweet Dreams are made of this" is basically me saying, look at the state of us, how can it get worse? I was feeling very vulnerable. The song was an expression of how I felt, hopeless and nihilistic. I traveled the world and the 7 seas, everybody's looking for something, was about how we're all in this perpetual state of seeking. It's about surviving the world. It's not a normal song, so much as a weird mantra that goes round and round, but somehow it became our theme song. Eurythmics spent a week at the top of the Billboard chart, and throughout the 80s, they released 8 albums and remained a staple on the radio and MTV with hits like Here Comes the Rain Again, Would I Lie to You, There Must Be an Angel, and Missionary Man.
Dreams are made of these. Who am I to decide? My friend, you know what's in store. I'll be here. I want to kiss like lovers do. Want to dive into your. There's just one thing that you must understand. You can fool with your. I must be hallucinating. Watching.
In 1990, Eurythmics disbanded but reunited occasionally. Dave Stewart became a renowned producer, working with big names in rock like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and Bon Jovi. He won the Brit Award for Best British Producer 3 times. Annie Lennox, on the other hand, launched a successful solo career. Her first 2 albums, Diva (1992) and Medusa (1995), reached #1 in the UK and were certified double platinum in the USA. She is also known for her support of political and humanitarian causes. In 2003, Annie met Nelson Mandela in South Africa at a concert for his AIDS Foundation. She never imagined participating in such significant events from her early days in Scotland, where her parents warned she'd end up working in a factory if she didn't dedicate herself to her studies and chores. Annie grew up in a tenement, with her father working in shipyards and her mother as a cook and homemaker. Although she possibly inherited her musical talent from her father, who sang in a choir and played the bagpipes, they didn't get along well. Her father was from an older generation and didn't understand the 60s counterculture revolution. He matured early and didn't experience the freedom that the youth of his time did. As an only child, Annie sought independence and to break free from her parents' strict lifestyle. They didn't understand her move to London or her musical ambitions, but they were proud of her. Despite not fondly remembering her childhood, her parents' deaths deeply affected her. Her father died in 1986 and her mother in 2003, both from cancer. In 1988, Annie experienced another profound loss with the stillbirth of her son Daniel from her second marriage to Israeli filmmaker Uri Fruchtman. In a TV interview, Annie mentioned that the birth of her daughters from the same marriage was a blessing that helped her overcome Daniel's loss. Such events deeply influenced her music and made her reflect on the fragility of human life. She noted that her art and personal tragedies are closely linked. Annie has been married 3 times, with the first 2 ending in failure, leading her to vow never to marry again. However, she broke this promise and remarried a doctor in 2012. In the end, now at 69, Annie overcame the early challenges of her hometown to become one of her country's most recognized stars. Despite her fame, she remained grounded and engaged in social causes, echoing her childhood. She and Dave have always been grateful for the bank loan that propelled their sweet dreams. They will likely always be remembered for that peculiar yet powerful 1983 song, a unique blend of sounds and ideas in pop music history. That's it for today's video. Did you know the story of Eurythmics? What's your favorite song from this iconic duo? Leave your answer in the comments.